All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Douglas Show. The Super Monday crew is here. Adam Aniba, George Carmi, and our special guest today from Fox 5 in DC is Chad Ricardo. Chad, what's up, man?
Oh man, fellas, thank you all very much. I was telling you all off air how excited I was to be here. That is an excellent intro, man.
Yes, no doubt. Got that earlier this year.
Yeah,
Shout out to Authentic for putting that together for me. Chad, let's get to know you real quick before we get to talking about the football team.
sure.
How did you get started? It feels like you have exploded on the scene recently, my friend.
Okay.
You know what? First of all, thank you. And again, thank you all for having me here. I think that without taking up too much time to tell my own story, Doug, one of my favorite parables in life is that of Chinese bamboo. If you all are familiar with that story, you take it, plant a seed, and you got to water it for 5 years, 6 years before it ever breaks the ground. And then when it does, it grows a little bit once it does. I've been covering sports here in the Washington, DMV area for the last 10 years. I began when no one would hire me, no one would give me a job. I started covering youth ball because I was able to get in it that way. And I understood that the 5 stars of tomorrow were out there on those youth football fields today. So I built relationships there with student athletes such as your Chase Youngs, such as your Walter Rouses, who's a college offensive lineman now, and then Rakim Jarrett's, Anthony McFarland's, et cetera, et cetera. And then after just really chopping the wood, hitting the stone, anything else you want to think of, I eventually built my way up to NBC Sports Washington, then had a show with ABC 7, and then finally now with Fox 5. So I'm very, very thankful to be here.
Chad, I was stalking your timeline the other day as a man that's now in North Carolina, but was a proud resident of Prince William County.
There we
I
go.
saw you share a little love the other day. Are they rocking out there or what?
Brother, listen, Freedom Woodbridge, the Freedom Eagles down there in Woodbridge, Virginia, led by Coach Daryl Overton. They were the back-to-back VA 6A champions this year at the high school level. They will be favored hands down to win it again for a third time next year. But I think that what is truly significant about that public school program is that Coach Dio has a pipeline as it relates to a youth organization that he founded called Playmakers Elite, which won national championships at 3 different age groups as well. Many of those student athletes go on and they come to Freedom. I want to be clear because it's illegal to have feeder teams in public school. So it's not a feeder team, but that is a foundation and organization that he started to help to give back to the community, which also does end up benefiting that Freedom football team as well. And more than football, basketball, softball, et cetera, et cetera. Coach Daryl Overton, a good man, giving back to Prince William County.
All right, fellas. I thought before we got to talking about the product on the field, and we can do a little bit of that if you like, I thought maybe we'd start today with a little bit of trivia. I mean, the 3 of you could play as a team, just chime in, and we'll try to knock some of these out. Let's start here. There are 4 players who currently have their jerseys retired for the Redskins, Commanders, whatever you like. Let's get those 4.
Wow.
Just shout them out if you know them.
They're not retired though, right? They're just not given out during practice, I thought. But
no, there's 4 that nobody can use anymore.
Sonny Jurgensen, is that one?
Sonny Jurgensen is one.
Riggins would be one.
2 of them got retired this year.
Oh,
okay. Sammy Ball?
Sammy Ball is one.
Okay.
it's good. It's good.
Those were the 2 that were already retired.
Sean Taylor and Riggins then, right?
Sean Taylor is one. Riggins has not had his right position, wrong player.
Oh, Charlie Taylor.
Right.
Close.
Oh,
Interesting. Bobby Mitchell.
Bobby Mitchell.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Okay, let's see. Who is the all-time scoring leader for the Redskins?
Lowmiller, right? Chip Lowmiller, the kicker.
You're on the right track.
Yeah, it's going to be the Mark Mosley.
It's Mark Mosley.
Wow.
Sorry, my bad. I'm a Redskin nerd. I got this.
Career rushing yards leader.
Oh, that's Riggins.
It is Riggins. Let's
Sorry,
see.
fellas, I'll be quiet.
Now the most career passing.
George,
Most
please
career
don't be
passing.
quiet.
I didn't hear the question. Sorry, Doug.
Most career passing yards.
Mark Rippon.
Nope.
Theismann, right? Oh, it's Ball, isn't it?
It's Theismann.
Theismann.
25,206 for Theismann.
Okay.
Wow.
And then let's see. Art Monk is the all-time leading receiver yards. Do you know? Can you give me a ballpark on how many yards?
Oh, yards. Wow.
Jeez.
I'd say like 9,000.
It's 12,026 for Art.
Look at
Wow,
that.
good for him. That's
I
I was
impressive.
going to go with 9,001, and
Yeah, the price is right.
That's right.
Price-
Take the prices right.
That's
I
right.
love it. I love it,
You
Chad.
had
Good strategy. Always works.
All right, very good, George. Anybody that needs help on their trivia team, call George right away. Let's see, George. It was one of those games. We were talking off air. It's one of the least inspired that I can recall. It reminds me to the days right before Shanahan got here. What was your vibe coming out of that game yesterday?
Coming out of the game was really interesting, right? So going into the game, just like I wasn't really interested in watching the game. I put up a tweet on Twitter that like when Washington like kind of falls apart, they fall apart gloriously, right? We saw it in 2013, we saw it in 2019, we see it in 2016. Like these every couple of years, it's like they fall apart. The coaches go out with a burning flame. Everything seems really ugly. There's a lot of finger pointing. They never gracefully walk away. So going into the game, I was like, you know what? I'm not really excited. I'm kind of doing my due diligence. I'm a Washington fan. I do podcasts. I don't understand my content. I'm going to watch the game. The game was pretty lackluster for the most part. And kind of, Washington's offense was not impressive by any means. I think Sam Howell had 100 yards passing. It wasn't really impressive. We had balls in the red zone. We couldn't even score. It was pretty ugly, especially with the snapping with the, Cameron Cheeseman. The one intriguing part about the game walking away was Jacoby Brissett coming at the end. Like, what is that all about? Because I feel like that kind of like is going to lead to a lot of conversations today because we don't really know what that was all about, right? Is Sam Howell struggling? Is Eric Bieniemy's offense pretty effective, but Jacoby Brissett was just like, he's a veteran that can, play it more effectively. The pocket presence, was that Jacoby Brissett or is that Sam Howell giving up sacks? We have no idea. So I feel like there's a lot of questions that came up from the game, and I'm kind of curious over the next 3 weeks what's going to happen in Washington. How are things going to play out?
Chad, we've heard rumblings that maybe the locker room was a little bit more lost than we think. We've heard now a couple of times from Montez and some other rumblings. Does this make sense in your mind? Then we often hear that if a coach sticks with a player for a reason A, let's say, and everybody kind of realizes that maybe option B was the better route.
Sure.
Do you think maybe some of that could have been happening here? Do you think that maybe people inside that locker room felt that Brissett would give them a better option?
Sure. I believe, and again, with my access to being able to be there at practice, I believe that going into the season, that if you had one game to win, that likely Jacoby Brissett would be the one that the entire team would be behind for that one game to win, especially at the beginning of the season. But to be honest with you, I think that Sam Howell won the trust of that locker room. Sam Howell is such a likable guy. Right. Now that's a double-edged sword, right? Because when you're when one of your best skills are your soft skills, meaning people like you, that's great when you're winning or at least when you're close. But when you begin losing, and yesterday ended up being the fifth straight loss for this Commanders team, and many of those games are games in which Sam Howell didn't play well. So now when you're losing like this, and when you can point to that quarterback position and say he's not just a part of the situation, in some ways he is the main catalyst of the situation. I do believe that it's in those moments that the team can start to say, well, this season is lost when all this time we had a guy who maybe could have gotten it done.
It was interesting when Adam, I don't know if you noticed this or not, your thoughts. It felt like now coach says they pulled Howell to keep him from getting pounded on. However, part of that I think was it felt like that was the same time Larson and Leno goes out.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they just felt like Brissett took all those reps. Brissett didn't take a first team rep all season. So I wonder if it was just as much a product that they thought maybe he'd be more comfortable with those two linemen once they go into the game. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's part of it, but I think they knew it was coming. I think when a team is up with a lead, there's going to be a lot more shells, a lot more prevent, and I think it was a little safer situation for someone like Brissett. Just look at his size, look at his stature. He takes some hits. He's going to get you some yards on the ground if he has to make some plays. But I think there is something to be said for this whole season. Sam Howell, say what you want, hold on to the ball too long, whatever. He's still taking a beating, and I think at that point, I guess with Ron Rivera, he just didn't see anything. That's part of the reason he's just not a good coach because, he just doesn't have those gut feelings. He doesn't, I think this was just a move out of desperation. I think he knows he's on the way out. And, probably a move to preserve Howell a little bit. But they knew that the team was going to go into prevent defense. They were going to see some backups against the Rams. So I think they knew that there'd be opportunities for Sam Howell. But at this point, Ron Rivera wants to see him succeed, but, he still wants to win games. So.
Chad, the offense has regressed exponentially the last month and a half. In my mind, it feels like he feels like he's skated by on this thing without taking a whole lot of blame for an offense that I think is scoring a point better a game than they were last year. I mean, it's not for all the thoughts of how big this offense was going to be. It hasn't been, and I don't think anybody's really talking about it. Are you surprised by that?
This is one of the things that I was considering as well. On my show last night, I had Tailgate Ted in on my broadcast, and I asked him the same question I've been asking Santana Moss on my other show the rest of the year, which is Sam Howell the guy? Is Sam Howell the guy? As Commanders fans, former Commanders players, are you comfortable with moving forward with him? And up until this point, Santana's answer was always, look, man, we've seen flashes of him. He's still a young player. He's still developing, but I'm not sure. Last night, I was not surprised, but I was taken aback at how strongly Tailgate Ted answered that he absolutely is not, especially when you take a look at the fact that this is a team that's looking at a top 5 draft pick. And can you truly decide not to take a front-end potential franchise quarterback because you see a glimmer of an inconsistent Sam Howell, where, again, those soft skills of being likable have to be thrown out of the window. But to come back to answer your main point in relation to Eric Bieniemy and how he coincides with this, I do agree with you there. I think that Eric Bieniemy there has to be a sense of culpability on his behalf as well. But I think that the offense is still the second most underperforming unit on this team, because coming into this year with a second-year quarterback who had started all of one game coming in, you had to imagine that you were going to be able to rely on that defense while the offense kind of got it together. And this defense has not been anything that could be relied upon.
It's been one of the biggest downfalls in recent memory, George, this defense. People were not worried about Sam playing. Whether Sam was a 50, first of all, I don't think anybody thought he was going to average 50 passes a game or whatever it is that they're at now.
Yeah.
But I think that most fans thought, here's the plan. We've got a good running game. We'll run the ball. We'll lean on play action with Sam, take our shots when we can, and we'll lean on what was a top 10 defense last year, in which they expected it to be better after adding a first-round cornerback who led the SEC in takeaways. He got 6 snaps yesterday. And Quan Martin, who by all accounts was the guy they took because they didn't think Brian Branch was going to get taken the pick before. What happened to the defense, George?
Well, first of all, I think you're exactly right? Going into this offseason, the thought was Washington was building the Seattle Seahawks type of, mentality with Russell Wilson back in the day, right?
That's right.
That foundational defense, that defense that could carry the team. Sam Howell is actually built similar to Russell Wilson, more of like a mobile quarterback, more of a run game, but have some play action in regard to that. Montez Sweat and Chase Young were on contract years, potentially playing for big money, going to have a big year in regard to that. We also talked about the secondary taking a step forward too. So there was a lot of promise coming into the season. I think it's just a lack of chemistry and lack of communication. I think we see it almost weekly. There's a breakdown in the secondary, a big plays given up. From what I'm gathering and from what I've heard from John Keim, who I truly respect, the secondary has a lack of communication, and there really isn't a veteran presence anymore. Last year we had Bobby McCain. He's a limited athlete in regard to skill set, but what he was strong about was being a leader in the locker room, being a leader on the field, using communication, and it's telling people where to be. Right now, we lost Derek Forrest really early on in the year. That might be a bigger issue than we maybe put thought of originally. We have Percy Butler back there, who I do like. I actually like Percy Butler, but I think he's still kind of growing into his own. And it's hard. Think about you at 23, 24, sitting in the background and kind of leading people and telling them where to be, especially multi-million-dollar athletes. It's kind of hard to do, right? So I feel like he just doesn't have the voice and the command to basically direct people. So I think it's just confusion. And Benjamin St-Juste had a great quote yesterday in the locker room. He talked about there was a one play. I don't know if you guys remember. Cooper Kupp 60-yard touchdown pass was a breakdown, easy touchdown pass. And he's like, you know what? It was a mistake between Cam Curl and I. There was two ways to play that route concept. We both did a different one, and basically, they just took advantage of it, right? So I think communication has been the big thing, and maybe we've talked, and on this point. They talked about complications and maybe Jack Del Rio made it too complicated for the players. Maybe that was the case as well. So I think it was more scheme as opposed to talent. I think the talent's there, but the guys are in their own heads right now.
Jed, you're around the players. Where do you think they're at mentally right now? Are we? You hear people talking about checked out, and I think that's tough to say because these guys are all getting paid and they're all professionals. They're trying to put out tape so that other teams can see. It's hard for me to buy into this checked out, but at the same time, we've all been at jobs where it's like Christmas vacation is coming and I can't wait to get there. I've given this all I've got and I don't got any more. What does it feel like around the organization right now?
Sure, Doug, you said where are they? My initial thought was going to be Honolulu is where I think that they are right now. Look, man, they are. And I attempt to always keep in mind, whether I'm on air or whether I'm at practice, etc., to always keep in mind that these are not just NFL players. These are men who have jobs, who have families, who have people that care about them. And not only those men, but then to the coaching staff, to the PR department, to the marketing department, all of those individuals have jobs and everything. Their futures are potentially contingent upon what it is, the product that they put out there on the field. So it's not my desire to besmirch or to belittle what it is, but I think that it's hard right now, right? I think that when your defensive coordinator, let's start back. When two of your top young talents who were also locker room presences, when they get traded away, and I don't blame the organization for that, because I think that if Montez and Chase are here, I think that we're probably looking at a 7-9 team. And really being 7-9, what does that ultimately do for you at the end of the day? It gives you draft picks throughout the whole entire draft. So I don't think that was a bad move. But when they get shipped away, I think that sent the initial message that, hey, this season is really not something that we're going for. We're building for the future. And then when you fire the defensive coordinator, now I think that you're rolling on 4 flat wheels, bro. I think that there's no air in those tires whatsoever. People are showing up. Football is a physical sport that makes it a dangerous sport. So you got to show up and your heart has to be there. But George, you talk about those communication issues, which have been happening all season long. But in football, all it takes is for you to not be completely locked in for half a second. And then Cooper Kupp is wide the F open 70 yards down the field.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Adam, I know I won't speak for you, but we do enough of these that I feel confident to say you were fairly confident going into next season with Sam Howell's the guy and kind of adding some pieces around. Do you still feel that way?
I think with a new GM, I said it on Twitter, I think it's 50-50. I think, they'll bring in their GM, that, they'll look at the analytics, because that's going to be a big factor for them. So they're going to factor in, getting an early round quarterback, or, going for, a potential, Trent Williams kind of type, because, if Washington never made that mistake and Trent Williams was still with them today, I think, I'm not talking how many wins he's going to bring, but I think you're in a different position right now. You're probably in a position to maybe go a franchise quarterback, but I just feel that you're going to go franchise quarterback. If you look at free agency right now, Tryon Smith from Cowboys, I don't think he's going to get away. I think, and if he does, I don't see him going to a rebuilding team like Washington. So free agency is bare for left tackle unless, a name emerges. And, how do you pass up, two guys from Olu, PSU, and, the kid from Notre Dame? How do you pass that up? And just bringing a quarterback he's going to be in a bad situation with the offensive line, another patchwork offensive line. So I think those are all the things going to get considered. But in saying that, yeah, I'm evaluating quarterbacks now. I wasn't planning to, but I'm going to be evaluating them because I think you got to think that's going to be in play. If they were in the 12 range, 13, like they've been in the past, maybe. But I think they're looking at top 5 right now. So I think they'll definitely be looking at one of the quarterbacks.
George, has your mind changed about the quarterback situation, and how much of that is just the knowledge that, generally speaking, I guess it's somewhere around 7 out of 10 times, new front office, new head coach means new quarterback. You're hoping you're not picking in the top 5 very often.
Yeah.
That's where this becomes tricky, right? Because you don't want to be picking in the top 5. And if you are, you want to maximize your value in the top 5. There is no greater value than the quarterback position.
Absolutely. It's difficult, right? So we've talked, we're here every single Monday. We talk about the football team. I love Sam Howell's, courageousness, his moxie, his way he commands the locker room.
Don't say moxie, George.
Don't say moxie. Yeah. Sneaky athletic. No, exactly. No, but he has his arm talent, and he is physical, and he's functionally mobile as well. Like, there is a lot to like about Sam. But you do have to kind of raise an eyebrow, right? Over the past couple of weeks, we've been playing more difficult defenses. We're starting to see him, sort of fade a little bit in regard to his production. He still has a turnover a week. We can deny that and say it's because of the volume of passing attempts that he has, but he has an interception every single week. And potentially, we had 3 or 4 straight weeks of pick sixes going against him as well. So we're starting to see some flaws there. You have to, long story short, you have to weigh all options, right? Michael Phillips had a really good quote today that I heard on John Keim's podcast. It talked about, like, we can't relive the sins of the past, right? Jay Gruden essentially inherited Robert Griffin III. He was stuck with him, right? He had his hands tied. Ron Rivera had his hands tied with Dwayne Haskins, and they're limited in what they could do and how they could build the team. I think that's kind of where we are with whoever our new head coach is going to be. If he likes Sam Howell, if the GM likes Sam Howell, then move forward with it. I have no problem with that, but I don't think there should be any limitations in regard to it. Doug, as you alluded to, being top 5, I think at that point you either take a quarterback or you trade back, get a treasure trove of picks, right, and kind of build around the team. That's kind of where I want to be. Like, I think a tackle would be nice, and I do like, we saw Trent Williams, we saw Chris Samuels, we see this kind of foundational building blocks. But at the same time, I don't think that we're one player away. I think we need multiple players to kind of build up. So I either want a quarterback that can elevate the entire team or multiple first-round picks to build up the team. And I'm not the paid professional. I'll put that in the GM's hand to kind of select. But, yeah, I think all options are on the table. I do like Sam Howell, but we'll see where it goes.
To that end, the biggest thing is getting blue chip players this team is lacking. Chad, who are there any blue chip players left on the roster?
On the Commanders roster. So Big Doug, let me be clear here. I am a journalist and anchor and reporter here in Washington, D.C. I cover the Commanders. I am a Giants fan. Why do I say that? The reason why I want to make that delineation is because there was at no point this year in which I was blinded by the idea that this was a playoff team, nonetheless a contending team. If you looked at this roster again, it was in a best case scenario, maybe you can squeak out a 9-8 situation. In an absolute everything goes the way that it wants to go, but more likely 6-10, 7-9, whatever the math is with the new number of games that come in now. So when you look at this team, the blue chip, you've got weapons at wide receiver. You do. Terry McLaurin, not having the greatest of years. Is that because of the offense? Is that because of the quarterback play, the offensive line, etc.? But you got Terry McLaurin. You've got a running back who's really good. Haven't found the best ways to utilize him in Brian Robinson, but you've got him. I still like Sam Howell. I don't know that he's going to be around. If I'm the GM, if I'm picking third, I'm probably not going to stay with Sam Howell, but I can't knock anyone if they do because I really like that young man, and I like who he is. That defensive side of the ball, though, now that you've traded away your two edge rushers, you've got two guys on the interior, but does Jonathan Allen even still want to be here anymore? Does he? And when your captain, your most vocal player, when he does not want to be there, then I believe that you have to do all that you can to get him out, because his message is going to be heard one way or the other. And then after that, what do you got on the defensive side of the ball? So
absolutely.
Deron Payne's quietly had a pretty good season. I know people have been down on Deron, but actually he's been pretty good. Chad, you make me think we're having a quarterback discussion. Are the Giants going to draft a quarterback this year?
Look, bro,
do they have to ride it out with Daniel Jones one more year?
Same thing, right? Same thing. And you know, I mean, again, I know that we want to stay with the Commanders, but I think that it's a similar situation. I think that we had I think that all Giants fans were kind of keeping our fingers crossed, thinking that we had a Brock Purdy situation on the way with Tommy DeVito. But if you looked at the games, that was never the case. I mean, we were winning games because of the defense. The defense causing turnovers, the defense allowing 10 points, 12 points, 7 points, and us scoring twice on offense to win games. Tommy DeVito just happened to be the quarterback as we were able to do that. So moving towards next year, if we have a top 5 pick, which we very well may, I think that we have to consider that quarterback position as well. Daniel Jones, even though he just re-signed, he's in a position in which after next year, we can get out of that contract without giving up too much. So if we're top 5, we consider it. If not, then go ahead and add value around the team. I don't think the team is that far away. We've got money in terms of the salary cap due to the Leonard Williams trade. We're going to have, if Seattle loses a couple of games, we're going to have 2 really high second-round picks to be able to supplement that team as well. So I think that the Giants are going to be in a good position one way or the other.
It's funny, Chad. You have a fan in the chat. It says Rockman 1033. Exactly, that's correct with everything you said, Chad. Thumbs up right there.
Oh yeah.
Skin the man alive, I suppose, says Washington has been on a constant revolving door time to stop in regard to the quarterback position. So thank you, fellas, for chiming in. Appreciate it.
Adam, if they go quarterback in the first round, what do they have to immediately do in the second round?
Offensive line. Like I said, you know, if you're going to bring a young guy in here and expect him, you know, just to be even serviceable early on, you know, this line is bad. You know, it's not just not good. You know, it's really bad. It lacks total talent. You know, I've heard people talk about, you know, move Leno over to right tackle and, you know, see what you can get in free agency at left tackle. But like I said before, you know, it's just slim pickings right there. So if you're gonna go quarterback, I think in the second round, you know, you're going to have the kid from Arizona. There's a lot of kind. I'm just getting watching. I'm watching through the first rounds already, but getting into those second, third round guys, and there is talent. You know, it is deep at offensive tackle.
Deep for tackles, right, Adam?
You know, but
good year to need a tackle.
What's that?
Good year to need a tackle in the draft this year, right? It's deep at the position.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, when you get out of the first round, the second round, you're starting to find guys, you know, with deficiencies. You know, I just wrote about the Oregon State kid, you know, excuse me, I'm not going to butcher his name, the Samoan, but, you know, I have him on that borderline end of the first, early second round. But again, great run blocker, but, you know, deficiency in pass blocking. And that's what's going to happen when you get out of the first round. You know, they'll be good on one side and need more work on the other. But, you know, we talked about the Penn State kid and Notre Dame. You know, those are total package guys. But, you know, like Skins Alive said, you know, tight end. That's another thing nobody's talking about. I talked about it early on. You know, in a trade back scenario, that's an opportunity where you can look towards the future. You know, this kid I started watching, then I found that he transferred from Duke, he's transferring to Notre Dame. The name escapes me right now, but I started watching some games and heard I transferred. But this is a guy next year that could be the first quarterback. So if you're Washington, you can trade back, get a guy like Brock Bowers, continue to build and, you know, get draft capital next year. You're still looking in the future because I don't think this ownership, if they're truly using analytics, it's going to be a long game. It's not going to be a short game. And, you know, a team that thinks they're closer, I think, will definitely go quarterback early on. But there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to want to move up from that 10 to 15 range with Washington to get a quarterback. If it's, you know, we're talking about May, Daniels, you know, if we're assuming that Williams is going to be number 1. So I think that's just going to be a huge opportunity that they haven't had in years to actually trade back. And, you know, great to get one of the blue chip guys that, you know, I wrote about Scott. I love the, you know, the tackles, but if you can move back and, you know, get picks for this year and next year, you're covering yourself on both ends. I'm tending to think that that's going to be the line of thinking. But again, until we get a GM candidate that's, you know, has some kind of track record with teams that, you know, we see how they work, we're really not going to know. But I think that, you know, getting a quarterback is definitely, risky if you're trying to, build a team without any, true pass protector. So, we'll see.
Chad, assuming that they clean house, and it looks like that will be what happens here, philosophically, from a football standpoint, do you have a preference, offense or defense, for your head coach?
Sure. I think that right now you have to go offense, right? And just to double down on Adam's thought, though, and this was something that we spoke about on my show last night on Fox 5 as well, is that this has been such a head coach driven organization for years now that it will be beneficial to bring in a GM, and not only to bring in a GM, but one of the things that I love that my Giants did is when you can bring in that GM and head coach and link them together. Two men that come in with the same philosophy, who come in knowing that their success is tied to one another. So if one of you go, both of you are likely going as well. So I think that you do that, you get that GM in place, you bring in who you have to imagine should likely be an offensive-minded guy. Back in the day in which I played football, I didn't play very well, but I played on the defensive side of the ball. Defensive guys are smart as well. We see a defensive guy being successful down there in Houston with a big-time young quarterback, so
Absolutely.
it can happen. But when you can bring in that GM, link him with that coach, potentially that coach being a big-time offensive mind, then the rest of it, especially with some of the weapons that this Commanders team already has, some of those things can come together. And Adam, I agree with you. If there is a situation which you can trade down, you look at the draft capital that you got for Chase and Montez, add that to some more draft capital. Now you can begin to build this roster out and get this roster depth.
As we think about quarterback, because obviously it is the most important position on the field, maybe in all of sports, I think about how you prioritize things. And so, Chad, I'm curious your thought here. Who is the better quarterback, Sam Howell or Justin Fields?
Oh man. I think right now Justin Fields. Why do I think that? I think that right now it's Justin Fields. Justin Fields is not without his own limitations. He has a ton of them, but what we're seeing is that so does Sam Howell. They both are prone to turning the ball over, but Justin Fields has more big play terminology in him. I know that Cam Newton has come under fire in the last couple of days because of the comments that he made about the NFL being filled with game managers now as a term, as opposed to game breakers. Justin Fields is a game breaker, which does not always mean a good thing, because in order to be somebody who can take the game over, that means that you could also fumble the bag on your way to trying to take it over. But Sam Howell, because he has been so turnover prone as of late, he has proven that he too is not a game manager in the sense of what it is that you're looking for either. So I say Justin Fields because the upside is higher.
George, I asked that question because as we start doing this right in the off season, we'll start talking about value. And people will say, we have Sam Howell and he can be this, or we have Sam Howell and he could be this. But here's the thing: if somebody was willing to trade 3 first-round picks for Caleb Williams to get up to 1,
that's right,
or for Drake Mays or whatever it takes, when you start ranking the value of these things, I think it starts putting into perspective what we have, what other people would be willing to spend on it, and what potentially that shapes the outcome of what this team will do in the future. Like, how much overvaluing of Sam Howell is there that we'd sit pat with him and go some other position when you have this kind of top 5 pick?
That's what's interesting about the whole situation, right? So I think Chad alluded to it. I think Sam Howell's a good player, but there are limitations, right? Like yesterday we were watching the game. He's more of a shorter quarterback. I don't know what he's actually listed at, but he's like 5'11" in real life. Like he might be still listed at 6'1", 6'2", but he basically, when he throws the ball, he got swat down like 3 or 4 times trying to throw over the guards right in front of him. He is limited in that regard. He does have a good arm. He's not as explosive as Justin Fields. He can't get out of the pocket like Justin Fields. I love rants on the comments. What's up, Rant? Good to see you, bud.
Poor guy had to put the bag on Sunday.
Yeah, in LA, exactly. But going back to it, this might not be popular, but like Sam Howell, if you can potentially get something for him, this is idealistic, like a 2nd round pick, you might be kind of thinking about that, right?
George
Maybe
trying to
trade
get us
him out.
canceled. You trading Howell already? Come on.
I'm saying hypothetically. I don't think he'll net that. I think
George,
he'll probably
if you could get a second-round pick
Exactly.
for Sam Howell,
He
I
would
would recommend
go.
you trade him yesterday.
Exactly right. That's what I'm saying. So I mean, idealistic, Chad. So let's say he's let's say realistically a third round pick. I think he
Right.
probably maybe net a third round pick. You could potentially trade him, but being in Washington for so long and we're seeing how many quarterbacks get injured so often in the NFL. Why not just keep him in the stall, right? Like, let's say Sam Howell is in there. He potentially, he is a backup quarterback. Let's say we draft a quarterback and he falls, but Sam Howell ends up rising and becoming a great quarterback in that regard. We still have trading assets to basically flip it, right? The Patriots and Eagles have been doing that for years. Like, if you ever noticed, but they had Tom Brady, they got Jimmy Garoppolo, they got the guy Carson Wentz, got Jalen Hurts. They just constantly are keeping that quarterback position in the stall. And then on top of that, and with this whole rookie scale, getting a first round pick, if you whiff on a pick in the first round, it stinks, but it's not going to destroy your salary cap. It's not going to ruin you altogether, right? So, realistically, you have to shoot for that upside. If we're up there and there's a quarterback that is explosive, we talk about Justin Fields having that explosive ability. If we see a quarterback top 5, go for it. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, and I don't see a rush to trade Sam Howell unless you get a really good, return for him. In my opinion, it might not be popular in the locker room, but it's competition, man. You gotta make it happen.
Chad, we've been asking all of our guests, this season, once it kind of looked like Ron was going to be out of here, how will you remember the Ron Rivera era?
Man, differently now, right? Once beginning to work with Fox 5, and again, call me a softie, and which I'm really not, but I do believe in people. And Ron Rivera, just like Sam Howell, the press conferences are hard, bro, especially when the Commanders are losing, because these are two individuals that when you see them face to face, and as the Commanders fans that are out there listening right now, I know that you don't want to hear this, but when you see these men and you can see them as men, as individuals face to face, and you can stand next to them, you can say to yourself, man, like, I really like that guy. I like that guy. I feel for that guy. So that's kind of my non-journalistic feeling that I've had this season particularly. But from an all in all, bro, I mean, you look at it, he's made the playoffs once. He is devoid of a playoff win. I believe that finishing at 500, and I know that you all can tell me this, finishing at 500 1 year, no years above 500. So Ron Rivera's time here has been moribund. It has been a moribund team. It has been a disappointing franchise. It has been a travesty, a sham, and a mockery to all of the Washington Commanders, Washington football team, Washington Redskin fans that continue to show up and support this team. So the entire organization has let this city, this town, this region down.
Chad, I know you've got to run. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. We will get you on sooner than we did last time, I assure you.
Look, this has been an absolute blast. And again, I thank you all so very much for having me. Please do, Doug, bring me back, brother. I would love to do this.
We'll do it. Be good, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks, fellas.
Peace out, bro.
Easy, bro.
Bye-bye.
That was great. I had not had a chance to chat with him before. It's a great guy.